This morning, as we began some time of prayer, this question came to my mind. I was kind of surprised by it, especially because I was still thinking of the events of yesterday, particularly in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But the question came to mind is, where do you find beauty in your life? Where do you find beauty in your life? Some quick thoughts that came to mind was in a relationship, in others, in a mirror, in creation. But St. Augustine pondered that question. And he wrote a poem about it. A poem that has actually been in what we call the Breviary, the Liturgy of the Hours, since I was a seminarian. So I've probably looked at this poem for 40 years now. And yet, as I was thinking about it this morning, I thought it might reflect a little bit of what we might be feeling, especially not just in light of yesterday, but just the beginning of the school year and everything that's going on in our world. But this is what Augustine wrote. Question the beauty of the earth, the beauty of the sea, the beauty of the wide air around you, the beauty of the sky. Question the order of the stars, the sun whose brightness lights the day, the moon whose splendor softens the gloom of night. Question the living creatures that move in the waters, that roam upon the earth, that fly through the air. The spirit that lays hidden, the matter that is manifest, the visible things that are ruled, the invisible that rule them. Question all these. They will answer you. Behold and see, we are beautiful. Their beauty is their confession of God, who made these beautiful, changing things, if not one who is beautiful and changeth not. Sometimes I'm sure in our daily lives, we do wonder, where is beauty to be found? And yet, Augustine reminds you and me this morning that our beauty is no farther than our God. And as we say, even in the Psalms, the Lord is near. In fact, the chief tenet of our Christian faith is the incarnation, which acclaims that God is with us. And lest I thought I might be imagining what I was thinking about, that I was somehow off on the wrong track with my thoughts this morning, I set an alarm at the end so that at some point I know that my prayer time has to end and I have to start getting ready for the day. Well, I wasn't paying attention, and of course my alarm is on my phone like most people's. And I went to my phone, and this was the message on my phone this morning as I picked it up to turn off the alarm. It was a meditation, and it was written by a priest friend of mine, Father Patrick Briscoe, who some of you might know. But this was the title of the meditation that was on my phone when I picked it up. Finding Truth and Beauty in God. Finding truth and beauty in God. And I thought to myself, what else has to be said? It says it all. And yet, as I was thinking of that, one who really wrestled in finding God in his life was Augustine. Augustine has a pretty colorful life. And he gives me hope because he also became a bishop. But the thing was, Augustine only really came to know God, to know Jesus Christ, when he was 33 years of age. That's after a long journey of searching, and I could say, and we won't go into all the sordid details, but this is what he wrote in his own Confessions, which is his autobiography. And he said this: "Late I have loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late I have loved you. You were within me, but I was outside, and it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. Created things kept me from you. Yet if they had not been in you, they would not have been at all. You called, you shouted, and you broke through my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I've tasted you. Now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burn for your peace." So my first message this morning, sisters and brothers, if in any way we think we've lost beauty in our lives, if there's any way that we think we might have even misplaced God in our lives, Augustine teaches us one thing: it's never too late. And as he reminds us in his passage in particular, and it's one of my favorite lines, "You were with me, but I was not with you." But the important thing for us to remember, God is with us. Even when we encounter the ugly things in life, the one thing that Jesus Christ shows us by his death on the cross is that he doesn't flee from the ugly. He doesn't flee from the challenges. And so my invitation to you, especially as, first of all, witnesses of the faith, is to know that that same message is for you and me. And yet today, as we begin a new school year, it's also about communicating. How do we communicate this message to our young people? Well, I want to introduce you to you this morning someone who I think this year can be the greatest communicator of all to us. And I got to be honest with you, he looks so real, because he was. And that's Carlo Acutis. Now, I won't ask you to raise your hands, but if I had to guess, some of you were born in 1991. That's when Carlo was born. Carlos was born in 1991. I would have been 2 years a priest at that point. I could have baptized Carlo. In fact, the interesting thing about Carlo, just so you know, and we talk these days about immigration, but Carlo was actually born in England. He actually was baptized in London. And yet, his family, of course, was from Italy, from the area around Milan, so eventually they returned to that country. But just to tell you a little bit more about Carlo, because some of you could maybe relate to this. In 1998, he made his first communion. In 2003, he was confirmed. He died at the age of 15. But what is so significant about this young man, and you see him with his backpack, and with his cell phone, and with the rosary, and that was Carlo. And Carlo became one of the greatest witnesses to the faith by being just who he was, a teenager. And yet, what's an interesting story, and if you get the chance, you can go on YouTube. His mother has even written a book about being Carlos's mother. But read the story, because it will talk to you about a 5-year-old who would lead his parents back to the practice of their faith. Until that time, even his mother admits, until she had Carlos, the only time she had ever gone to church was her baptism, her first communion, and her confirmation. And yet now, in this same family, their son is about to be declared a saint. But what was his sanctity about? Well, first of all, it was about his discovery of beauty in life. He discovered that the true beauty of his life was his relationship with God. In fact, he'd like to say this sometimes. He would say, if we go out in the sun, we can get a suntan. But when we get in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, we become saints. But he recognized in his model for life, his program for life, he said this: always to be united with Jesus. This is the program of life. Now remember, he died at 15. But this started at 5. So for 10 years, of those years we call adolescence, this is what he did. And I know some folks at Holy Cross have seen this, maybe others have. But you know all that Eucharistic pilgrimage that is found on the web, that of the Eucharistic miracles, and you see them sometimes on boards in the schools? That was Carlos. He did that. He put that together. And the other thing he did is he ministered to the poor and to the marginalized. Carlos knew he came from a privileged family. They actually had a male housekeeper, but they had a housekeeper. And so he knew he was a person of privilege. But you know what was so interesting about him? Instead of wanting his parents to buy him things, he was satisfied with what he had. And he would say to the parents, I would rather buy some sleeping bags. I would rather buy some warm clothes or some food. And what this young man did is that he went out to the streets of where he grew up near Milan, one of the suburbs, and he would hand out those things to people on the streets. He would even embrace people who others would say, oh, stay away from. Carlos said, and he was very adamant, that everyone was a child of God. And the other thing about Carlos was his peer ministry. Just because he did these things, he never put pressure on any of his peers. But he also challenged his peers not to give in to sin. One of his great sayings, and he would say this to his peers, was, everyone is born an original. Now mind you, this is a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. Everyone is born an original, but many people ending up dying as photocopies. Everyone is born as an original, but many people end up dying as photocopies. And with his friends, with his peers, he just wanted them to challenge them to see the beauty of God that each person was. And so for me, when I think of this young man, and I look at him and I think, I was a priest then, and I don't think I was doing what he was doing. But I think for you and me, as we ponder that question of beauty today, I don't know about you, but that's what I find beautiful. His life is pure beauty. He sees God, he finds God. He finds beauty in 3 places. He finds it in God. He loved nature. He loved being outdoors. He loved hiking and swimming and all those normal things. But what really impressed me is how he sought to find God in others. And so my other message today is I think that's our mission in the year ahead. to help our young people like Carlos did to find the beauty of God in one another. To encounter the beauty of God. We make our world out to be so ugly at times. But our world isn't ugly. Our world was made by God, in whose image we are made. What makes it ugly is sin and evil. And that's where we need to say, hold on here. And I have to say, if a 15-year-old, because I could read you other quotes, but one of his quotes was about sin. And it was the idea of not being enamored by it, not being caught up in it. But he did say this. He said, why do people worry so much about the beauty of their own body and not about the beauty of their soul? And the final thing I'll share with you, he said, is a life will be really beautiful if we come to love God above all things and our neighbor as ourselves. On the Feast of Augustine, where we call to mind duty ever ancient, ever new, I think it's a challenge to you and me today to ask ourselves, where do you and I find beauty? And to ask ourselves, like Augustine, if it seems to be missing, then maybe we just need to look around a little bit more. Amen.